Hi there, I'm Mike Buesseler. I'm here today at the Art Ranch. The Art Ranch is a concept product of Tory Hughes' incredible vision to bring a group of artists together and to share ideas. Today we're doing part of a series of tapes called Mastering the New Clay, and this particular lesson is an advanced caning class on landscapes. People often look at my pieces, my landscapes, and say to me things like, how did you get all those little pieces of clay to go in all those little tiny little places? Well, that's what this class is all about. I'm going to show you how I do that, and I'm going to simplify it, hopefully make it look easy, have a lot of fun, and maybe you will too. We're going to simplify this landscape into something that's like this, which happens to be one of the first landscapes I ever did, and one that I still like a lot. It has all the same elements, or the basic elements of a landscape. Much easier to do. Nevertheless, an interesting, appealing image, I think. And then we'll make the landscapes progressively more interesting, a little more fun. Not necessarily a lot more work, in fact. I think that's the part that you're going to like the most, that this isn't some kind of back-breaking labor of nitpicking detail. Then here's another example of one that looks a lot different, but we'll use the same techniques for this one that we use for the others, and so on and so forth. Here's a series of some of my favorite canes that all use a few simple tricks and a little bit of vision, a little bit of fun, kind of a free hand. And there's one that I was inspired by the nights in Alaska that I spent there for many years. So, having said that, let's get busy and have a ball. Here's everything you're going to need to complete today's lesson. You're going to need a toaster oven dedicated to polymer clay. You're going to need a pasta machine, also used exclusively for polymer clay, and a few tools. You want some sort of a needle tool. I've got a metal one here and a little bamboo knitting needle. Either of those are fine. You need a scraping tool of some sort. Here's an artist's palette knife available at any art shop anywhere. The scissors and the cardboard are for cutting templates, stencils that'll help us make nice, neat cuts. A tissue blade, and these two tissue blades are blades that I've modified with a propane torch and a pair of pliers. That requires a little bit more fussing around than you might want to tackle. If you can do that yourself, go for it. If you can't, or get a friend to do it, you can do everything that we're going to do today with an ordinary tissue blade. So there's nothing that requires those. They just help a lot. They're nice to have. The plexiglass sheets are something that I'm going to show you a little later that we use in reducing the cane. They're kind of a nifty little tool somebody just showed me recently, bringing the cane down to a usable size. If you choose to make your cane slices into jewelry, you'll want a pin back or a magnet of something like that. Here's a regular old pin back available at the bead store, and here's a glue that you can use to glue it on with. This one happens to be Zap-A-Gap. And of course we need some polymer clay in a whole variety of colors. This particular variety, this choice of colors, are kind of the ones that I chose for this lesson. Yours might be altogether different based on your personal preferences and likes or the landscape that you're going for. But so that you can follow along and make something that approximates what you see on this video, I'll read all these colors for you. This is Fimo, and the colors are 01, 0, 6, 4, 15, 34, F20, that's one of the fluorescent colors, and number 37. And that is everything that you need to do today's lesson. Okay, before we begin our landscapes, let's talk about caning a little bit. Caning is actually an ancient technique developed by Venetian glass blowers, eventually adopted by polymer clay artists. If we take two sheets of clay and put them together like this, and then roll them up very simply into a sort of a jelly roll, kind of forming a spiral as I go, and I get the stuff to go here. Here we go. It forms, a jelly roll image, a spiral. The purple wraps up inside the blue, and when we take that and slice through it, the image, every slice is the same. The image runs all the way through there, like that. There you see it. Well, taking that a step further, if we pinch and squeeze and hope and pray and shrink this down, the pattern gets smaller but stays more or less the same. And when we get it all done, every slice is still the same. That's sort of the basic idea of caning. This method we use today of using strips, rolls, and rolling them up, or rods, is just one way to construct a cane. What we're going to use in this lesson today, the method we're going to use is a little different than that. We're going to create a cane from sheets of rolled out clay stacked up nice and tightly like that. And here's a little stack that I made earlier, like this. Stack it up, and then this becomes our cane, our working piece. Then we create it. To create our image, we'll just cut out a piece of this clay, remove some material from this one, like that. In fact, let's remove a triangle from this one. Take the corresponding shape out of that one, bring the two together, and that is also a cane. A little different than the last one, but has the same properties. Then we can reduce that, squeeze it down, same way we did the other one, until it comes out looking something like this. Once again, the image runs all the way through. All slices would be the same. Here's a slice right there to take a look at. In order to make our landscape a little bit more interesting, let's start with a shaded cane. By a shaded cane, I mean a stack of sheets that has, as one end, a light blue, on the other end, a dark blue. And there's a nice smooth transition through that. Now I hope that looks kind of like a sky to you. That's what we're after here. Okay, I made this shaded cane by using these two colors, blue and white. The blue, you'll see I've got a piece of white sitting here. Fimo has an interesting property. The darker colors have a tendency to darken even further when you cook them. And one of the ways of overcoming that is by adding a little bit of white into the clay before you bake it. About 10% of the total amount of blue, a piece of white that's about 10% of the total amount, is a good number to work with. It's not set in cement or anything, but that's a good thing to keep in mind. While I'm at it, let's talk a little bit about conditioning clay. We need to get this stuff in shape to work with. That's called conditioning. And conditioning is simply a process of kneading and squeezing and softening and warming the clay, making it pliable and workable. One of the side benefits of this little 10% of white is you can use it as an indicator that your clay is well conditioned. When you mix this, when you knead it and squeeze it and twist it and squish it long enough so that that white is all the way mixed in there, you've probably got a good, well-conditioned piece of clay. Now when you get done with that, I shaped my piece into sort of a hockey puck shape here, approximately the same amount of clay, and it's much softer, it doesn't crack, it's nice to work with. The final test for this is if we flatten it out into to make it skinnier, make it thinner, and then run it through the pasta machine. If it's well conditioned, it'll go through the pasta machine fairly easily. It won't crack and crumble and fall all the pieces on you. If your clay tends to do that, you got some more work to do conditioning. When we get through, as it comes out of the pasta machine, it should look something like this right here. Now, it won't look quite like this. I've trimmed the edges off of this. What you'll get is something that looks flat like this, but it'll have a bit of a crackly edge. I'm going to bring that cane back in here and see this roughness right here. That's the look that your sheets might have when they first come out. But I trimmed these up, just trimmed them off to make them look a little bit better and easier to work with. Okay, do exactly the same process with the light blue up here. Mix those two together, knead them real well, condition them till it's blended, and that's about how it'll come out. Roll it into a sheet, and there's our two finished products, or at least for this step, the finished product. Okay, Now, this is a point at which you want to pay very careful attention. We're going to blend these two colors, and the procedure for this is not something you can fudge on very much. You need to do exactly what I'm doing. I cut my two original pieces on the diagonal over here. Just cut them like that with your tissue blade right through there, that one, and then rearrange them over here like this. Now, I'm going to sort of nudge these together. I had them laid apart so you could see where I got this. How it all works, you know. So squish those in there a little bit, tuck them together. Now what we're going to do is put those two together. This is sort of an economical way to do this Skinner blend. By the way, this whole procedure is known as the Skinner blend. It was designed or devised by a lady named Judith Skinner, who happens to be a friend of mine, and we all owe her a little debt of gratitude. So what we're going to do with this, once we've got them laid out like this, is to fold this piece here, the combination, over on top of that one, just like a book. Now I have to do this in pieces because these two are not going to want to stick together very well. Well, everything's just kind of loose here. So here's what I'm talking about. Imagine these two pieces together. Flip this over on top of the other piece. Line it up, edge to edge, fairly neatly, pretty tightly. This piece is going to flip the same way. Once again, in its original position, it was like this. We want to flip her up and over just like that and lay it in here. Oops. Like that. Fill in the missing space, you know, match it up with the other day. Now it's getting pretty sticky on me here. Yours will probably do that too. Okay, and so it looks more or less like that. I've got another piece already assembled here. Let me bring that in here. It's the same as that one, but I've got it's easier to handle. I've kind of tucked everything in. So do that too. Pack it in like this with your fingers on either side so everything holds together. And here's where we are. Now, again, double check that you do this exactly the way I'm doing it. Hold the piece in your hand, this way, in your hands. Look at these two edges and see that both dark blues are matched up there. On the other side, both light blues are matched up. On the top and the bottom, we've got a mismatch. That is, opposite colors are together. This is critical to the direction that is going to go through the pasta machine, to the direction of our blend, in fact. So take a good look at this, rewind if you need to, make sure your piece looks like this. Let me flip this over for a second so you can see the other side. The other side is sort of a mirror image in a way, but again, the key thing is looking at those two edges, and then we're ready to go to the pasta machine. Now, when you take the last piece of clay to the pasta machine, this is some more of that critical stuff. Make sure that the edges that go into the machine are the mismatched edges. Here's the two like edges. They're on one side of the machine. Two light blue edges on the other side of the machine. So unlike edges go in first. Get that straight. You get one crack at this, right or wrong. And then go ahead and pass it through the pasta machine. Nothing happens in this first pass. All you see is it gets a little longer, and that's about it. Now, though, the way it comes out, fold it back on itself in the direction that you rolled it. In the direction that you rolled it. Make sure you get that right. And then go back to the pasta machine. It's a good idea to take this folded end, the closed end, and put that in first. Again, never turn the direction. We've still got matched blues here, light blues on this end. Okay, and go back through the pasta machine again. Now we're going to keep on doing this over and over, always keep in the direction of fold and the direction of pasta machine, or the rolling, whatever you want to call it, in the same direction. That's the critical thing to do with this. It's going to start to change in a little while, a little bit at a time. It's kind of fun, as long as you keep it straight. Always in the same direction, folding it back on itself. Your ends will get a little irregular. Here you can see how they're starting to pop up. You can't help that. Just relax and let it go. Forget it. We're going to trim off some of that stuff anyway. Pretty soon you'll start to see some sign of a blend. Not quite yet. One more time through and I think we'll see something happening here. Fold it over, closed end into the machine, and drag it through. And let's see if anything's showing up yet. Yeah, you can just start to see that coming through. Some strange things happen. We get some interesting patterns there. There's some linearity showing up in there, but be prepared for that. That's to be expected. Notice when I flip that, I'm still keeping that direction the same. Don't do anything else. So that's a little weird. Fold and run it through again. I've lost count already, but if you're thinking of numbers, 15, 25, somewhere in there, 20, let's say, should be a good number. But the truth is you can stop about any place you want to, probably not here. Anyway, you can really start to see something happening now. Clearly we're getting a blend. There's no longer pure blue and pure dark blue and pure white blue. You can continue that process over and over, repeating it until we finally get something that looks about like this. Now I stopped a little early on this one. This is not a complete blend. It's not a totally smooth blend. It will get just as smooth as a spray paint, a spray can, if you keep it up. But this is good enough. I kind of like the looks of that. It kind of reminds me of a sky when I look at it that way. So this is the way it's going to come out, and there's your completed Skinner blend. There, right there. That looks great, doesn't it? That's it. Okay, once we've got our completed Skinner blend, nice smooth sheet, beautiful blend, great looking sky, I cut it into two equal strips, identical strips. That is, I cut two strips from that original sheet that looked just like this. Then I took them and laid one on top of the other, just like this. Come on, you guys. Get together there. And there we go. Match them up like that so that the blend matches perfectly, but it's a double thickness. I then took it to the pasta machine. Similar ends together, either the dark end or the light end, but make sure that they're the same. Looks like that. And run it to the pasta machine one time, stretching it out, and it comes out looking like this. Nice long blend. Beautiful thing. The last step to do is to cut that strip into little tiles. Now I cut mine about 1.5 inches deep. Just stick with me on that dimension. You'll see why I chose that a little later on. So cut one off, pick it up, stack it on top of the next one. You'll see in a minute here how that goes on top of the cane, or the top of the sheet. Cut another one, stack it up on top of the sheet, cut another one, whoops, paper out of there, set it on top of the strip, cut another one, and continue that until it looks like this, which is what we're after. And there's our shaded cane. Let's start with that simple landscape that I showed you at the beginning of the lesson. Looks something like this, if you recall. In order to make this one, we'll need two shaded blocks made using the Skinner blend that I demonstrated in the last segment. I chose purple and blue, but two interesting colors in any case. Some little pieces of white, which I've cut out of this sheet to simulate the snow on the mountains. And the procedure will go something like this. I'm going to cut out the outline of the mountains from the sky, remove that material, cut the mountains out of this purple piece, in which case we'll wind up with something that looks about like this, and then these two pieces will come together after we had the snow in there, and there's our landscape. So let me show you how that goes. We'll start with the sky. Need to put some mountains in there, so with a needle tool or I'm going to use that little card template. Just press those mountains in there someplace. This isn't critical where they go at all, so get an outline and then it'll work for you. I'm going to put 3 in mine. 3 is a pretty good number for landscapes. There they are. I can see those in there pretty well. Now this cut's a little bit critical. It goes like this. I'm going to use a straight tissue blade for this. There's another way I'll show you in a minute. Look right straight down your cut. Now the blade's not going all the way across there, but only up to the mark, to the peak of the mountain. And look straight down your cane, putting steady pressure on it, and follow through right straight to the table. Kind of a Zen cut there. Turn it that way, make another one. Cut out that whole mountain. Straight, hopefully, and that thing should fall out of there. Bingo. There's one. Cut another one out. Straight. Shake that thing up a little bit. Don't be afraid to manipulate your clay a little bit. Fool around with it. Check it over. Look down on it. Wiggle it around. Here we go. That one should come out. Oh, I'm having some luck today. I saved that last one for a reason here. I wanted to show you how to use that little bent blade that I talked about earlier. I happened to put about a 90-degree cut in, or 90-degree bend in this one, and I think you can see the sort of savings or the advantage of that. It means I can make just one cut and take that material out of there. So use it the same way. Look down, put it down where you want your mountain to go, press down, follow through, third mountain in place. And there we are, is our sky ready to go. Well, we need some mountains to go into that, so, and we wanted to fit that exactly, so, and this is sort of arbitrary the way I oriented this with the light on the top and the dark on the bottom. It's really not critical, but I found it to be the most appealing to me. Set the sky cane on top of that, and with either a needle tool, or I'm going to use the card for this again, press the outline of those mountains, and it press some sort of a guideline that you can follow when you make this next cut, just like that and like that. A needle tool would work for that too. Just trace the line. Basically, this becomes a stencil. Okay, go back and cut them again. Look and see where your lines are now. In this case, I'm removing material, leaving the mountains behind. I've got some extra lines showing here, so I'm going to real quickly reinforce those a little bit, or I'm going to cut the wrong place and it's not going to match. There we go. That's easier. That's better. And I think I'll use this blade for a couple of my cuts at least. Right down through it. There's one. There's two. And here's a neat little thing. The last two are actually just sloping away, so there's no sense in using the bent blade. Take the straight one and cut that right off like that. This one, like that. Can you see that at all? And there's my third mountain. It will be ready to go together, except no snow. The only thing we've got left to do here is to put in, I'm going to bring those little white pieces in here and show you what we're going to use here. Here they come. Those three pieces are going to fit right in the tips of the mountains right here. So I've got to remove material that corresponds to the shape of those. There it is. This blade is real handy for this, but I think I'll do one using this and then use a straight blade to show you that it can be done. Take a look at those white pieces and see that they're what size they are. You need to remove some material from the mountains that's equal to that. So set it in there as close as you can get it and shoot right down along the peak, kind of following that crest as a guideline. There's that little chunk removed. You see that profile we got there? Yeah. I think I'll do the next two with the straight blade just to show you that I can do it the hard way too. Like that, straight and all the way through. Rotate it and cut it. Out of there. Didn't quite get it. I can see that's tapered. Go back. You're not going to be able to see this no matter what I do, so I'm just going to do it and then show you the finished result. Down through it. Down through it. Again, room for the next snow. And then the last one. I'm doing these in kind of a rush. This is going to be kind of a sloppy fit, but that's all right. This is clay. Sometimes the results of your mistakes are the best thing you ever did. Then you take your little white strips and place them on the diagonal, right in those channels we just cut out at the top of the mountains, like so. Fuss around with them a little bit, nudge them in there, pinch them a little bit. Nothing too critical here. And then, since that shows pretty well, let me pick that up. I think I'm going to show it to you from right straight on. Like, there we go. There's your mountains. That one looks a little bit creepy right now, but it'll get better. And then the sky comes together. Good idea to start really from either the one side or the other, the back or the front, I mean. Tuck the points and everything, fit it all together, and kind of bring it along forward. These two canes aren't quite the same thickness. I'll even show you how to deal with that. But tuck it all in there. Now I've got a little overhang right there. No problem. Just cut it right off. Gonna cut that stuff right off there like that. There we go. There you see it kind of shaping up. Now squish it right down. Squeeze it together. Mash those pieces in there. Here's where the sloppiness either works or doesn't. I think on this one it's going to work. I mean, the mountains aren't perfect. Neither am I. So squish that down together. And there's our, that's what it looks like on the face before we cut it. And now here's the beauty of caning. I'll show it to you as clearly as I can. Taking that slice off of there. This is always, I think, the caner's greatest moment. That first slice right there is just it's what it's all about. I mean, what looked so crude and rough a minute ago, all of a sudden just comes to life. In every slice, picture perfect. Like that all day long. There you are. That's it. One of the last things that we did to our first landscape there, before I brought the two halves of this scene together, was to cut and insert the tips of those mountains, kind of suggesting snow on the tops of them. That added a lot of interest to that cane. We can do a similar operation to the sky part of the cane. It's important, though, that you do that before you bring the two halves together, because once you put it together, it's a little too late to do this, as you're going to see in a minute here. I think the obvious thing to add here would be some clouds. They're a lot of fun, and it makes sense to have them in the sky. Now, here's what you're going to need to do that. We're going to need a Skinner blend. Mine happens to be a white to gray blend. Makes sense for a cloud. Cut a chunk of it off. Shape it into something that looks about like a cloud. We'll say more about that when we get there. Cut the sky cane into a couple of halves. Remove the material where the cloud's going to go. Insert the cloud. Bring the two halves together. And there's a nice fat jelly bean in the sky. That's what we're looking for. It looks pretty simple right there. I'm going to show you how we got that in there in a few minutes. And then, after that, we'll take it a step further, show you something that I invented that really makes this thing look like a cloud. Here's an example of how I used it in a cane that kind of looks like what I used to see out my window in Alaska, or at least what I used to see around me in Alaska. Now let me show you how I put that cloud into the sky, right there at that step. We start out with our blue shaded cane, right there, and a little chunk of white that I've cut out. And before I can use this, I want to shape it into make it into a shape that looks a little bit like a cloud. It doesn't have to look exactly like a cloud. And for that matter, I'm not sure exactly what clouds look like. Anyhow, spend some time going out and looking at clouds. Look at some pictures if you want to. I took lots of photographs before I got relaxed with this whole thing. I think I discovered that I was kind of there one day when I looked at some clouds, and I thought, you know, I can make a better one than that. Thought that a little presumptuous maybe, but anyways, what I'm trying to do here is bring some of the white around to the sides of this. We're going for sort of a flat light shot here, scene, and most of the light will be on the outside, upper parts of the cloud. Nothing very critical about this at all for a lot of reasons, but there, that's just sort of a kidney bean shaped cloud. Real simple one. A lot of latitude on this, what you want to do with this. Now, take your sky cane, like that. Place the clouds somewhere in the sky. This is another one people ask me often, where the heck do I put my clouds? Well, put them where they look good to you. I'm going to stick this one in the middle of our sky because it makes it easy for me to show you what I'm doing. Lay it down there, trace its outline with a needle tool, some kind of a pointed thing here. Make a little line that sort of matches the shape of the cloud. Nothing critical about this at all. Boy, you can be, here's one place where you can really relax and be sloppy with this. Then, and I always like this part, always use a good sharp knife when you do all these cuts I'm talking about. It makes all the difference in the world. But there's something satisfying about cutting polymer clay down through the middle, to me. We're going to cut that straight through that cane all the way to the bottom, right in the middle of the cloud. So that about approximately half of the cloud is on each side of the cut. Pass it right down through the middle like that. open it up like that. You can see the marks on there a little bit. Now I've got to remove the material where our clouds are going to go. Now I'm going to make the first cut using this curved blade that I guess invented, or at least I modified it like this. And then to show you how nice this is, it might encourage you to make your own at home. Just line it up over the outline, push down, straight down, looking right straight through the bottom. Whoops. And then pull that out of there like so. There, you can see how that came out of there. Doesn't have to be very close because we're going to squish and fudge everything together a little bit later on. Now, just for the benefit of those who don't have a bent blade or who don't want to make a bent blade, I'm going to do it the hard way, just to show you that I can, and so can you. So take your straight tissue blade, make some cuts that are as close as you can get to the edge of that cloud. Cut in as far as you can until it starts to make the bend back there. So I'll make a couple of easy cuts like so. I'll show you what I've done. Kind of made some cuts that only go part way and open it up. And I didn't cut out the back part though, and I've got to get that material out. So I decided today to try to use my needle tool here. And I'm just going to poke and push and gouge, kind of like chiseling out wood, the back part of this cane. I'm going to turn it towards me because it's a little hard to work with from there, and then I'll show you what I've done. Push down through there. I'm just trying to cut it out. So it's the goal's the same, the tool's a little different. And if I have to turn it around and cut from the back for a second to make this come out, that's okay. Something like this. Make a few cuts and come on out of there, baby. Like this. Pull it on out. It's not coming as one piece. That's okay. I'll show you how to deal with that. This clay's a little soft under these nice warm lights here at the Art Ranch. I call them heaters. There, you can see I got most of the material out of there. Doesn't look too bad. If you don't like the looks of it, take a tool, push in there, round it out a little bit. There it is. All the material's cut out. Next step is real easy. It is important that which direction this thing goes in here. That is, we're talking, a lot of this is about light, really. The top of our sky is dark. The bottom of our sky is light. That is, the horizon end of it is light. Well, that means that the light would most likely be coming from above. At least that's the choice that I made here. So I want the whitest part of my cloud on the top. Tuck that cloud into there, stuff it into the space we just created. Take the other half, bring it right in there, nudge it right around. There's a lot of extra room in there, no sweat, no problem at all. It says it'll just all squeeze and pack down like that. And look, I got a chunk hanging out of here. That's big, no big deal. Show you what to do with that thing. In fact, first I'll cut it off. Show you that's how we solve that problem. Then I'll make another cut. Reinforces that business about canes in the first place, that the image runs all the way through it. Every cut is the same. And that little hole right there, you can see that little dark spot, that's a little airspace in there. All that's going to come out when we start to reduce this thing. After all that manipulation we did to this cane, all the cutting and reinserting, clay has a tendency to get soft and a little unruly on me. It will on you too. The answer to that is to give it a little bit of a rest. Set it aside, let it cool down, and everything will get a lot easier after that. We've got an extra one standing by here because we're working under some pretty hot lights, so that's why I'm bringing this one in. It's a little bit different color than the last one, but I think the concept's the same. Now, what we're going to do next is something near and dear to my heart. It's called the Jaggy Cut. It involves making a series of cuts through the cane, all the way down and through the cane, and continuing that process all the way across. Thin slices. I'll talk to you about how thin here in a little while. All the way through that cane and reassembling them. It goes like this. Make a cut, look right straight down at the cane, and as I do that, let me mention that one of the reasons I keep my canes the size that I do, that is pretty small, is because I got to do this cut to a lot of them. And if you get bigger than that blade right there, longer, or if it's too far, if the cane is too long this way, meaning top this way, it's almost impossible to keep your slice anywhere near straight. Anyway, cut off a little chunk, the corner, and then put it right back on where it came from, almost right back where it came from. Nudge it off to the side, jag it off either right or left, and put it back in. How far is kind of a relative question. You can probably barely see the change right there, but I'm going to say that's 1/8 of an inch or so off from where it was. You have to tuck it back into place a little bit off from where it was before. Yeah, there you can see it. Thanks, How you got that. Okay, then make another cut in a little deeper than the last one was, all the way down through. These are not real critical cuts in terms of, you know, making them perfectly straight. Now in this one, when I cut it off, I jagged it off the other direction. I moved it to the right, the opposite direction of the previous one. Tuck it in there. The reason I'm tucking it in, because sometimes when you make the next cut, that one tends to fall off. Continue this as you go. This step, this whole demonstration right here is so important to the quality of my canes, the quality that I like in my canes, which is their sort of realistic look, that I just can't overemphasize that enough. This is what I think the first place that I felt like an artist when I hit this. It just turned me on to this whole thing. It kept me going in landscapes. So we keep on doing that. And let me also say to you that this is not the only way to use this. What I mean is it's not a cut that can be used only on landscapes. I don't know if you can, yeah, that's a great shot right there. At least it is here. Keep moving those over. Use this on any time you want an interesting effect. You want to break up the kind of stiff look of a cane, which is what we're after. I'm going to keep on going here, making these cuts. Mine are probably more like about 1/8 of an inch thick. Some of that has to do with the scale of the cane and the effect I'm looking for, but you can do this over and over again, as you're going to see in a little while. And so if you want to make a series of thick cuts to begin, that's just fine. Go ahead and do that. Continue on through. Now I'm cutting into the cloud, which is sort of the point in the first place, but then it really starts to, it gets a little scary when you've worked so hard to put that cloud in there in exactly the right place and answered all those questions about how should a cloud look, and all of a sudden you're cutting the thing to pieces. Scary, but the right kind of scary. Kind of a roller coaster ride, I guess. Kind of a ride. Right on through that cane again, moving it over. Sometimes I don't even alternate the cuts consistently. Sometimes I'll make two go one direction and then the next one go back and forth. Make them irregular, but an alternating pattern is a good one to start with. Cutting again. I think you get the idea by this time. I'm going to continue that all the way through, one completely across and through everything. This is the key, that you cut through the whole works, right down to the bottom. Now here's a piece that I'm brought in, or that I've already done. I made one pass through this. By one pass, I mean you can see the lines on there. I hope if you can't, here's what I did. I did the same thing I just showed you. I made a series of cuts, diagonal cuts. That's kind of shaded that way. Let's take a look at it this way. Here, I made a series of cuts like this, all the way down through. I don't know, there's 15 or 20 of them on this one. I didn't count. I just went through and cut them, put them back together, and a little different than they were. And already, I think you can see some life in that cane, in that cloud. It looks a lot more like a cloud than this one does. Take a look at that. Boy, this one just juices me up. I could talk all day about this, but I don't think I'm going to get a chance to. Anyway, now, believe it or not, there's more to this. Take that cane, squeeze it together, and this time give it a little bit more squeezing and squishing. We're not trying to reduce it yet. What we are trying to do is get it to stay together. And again, it's getting soft. If you have to, set it aside, take a break, come back later. Usually I can hardly wait to do this next one. This part, I couldn't believe I was doing this myself when I did it, actually. But what the heck, you know, I made all these cuts. Keep going. That is, I'm going to cut through it again. If you remember the angle that first pass went through at this angle. Now I'm going to turn my blade this way and make another series of diagonal cuts all the way through that whole thing. It sounds hopeless, I know. Trust me, stick with me, stay on board, and hopefully it'll be worth your while. Once you do that, rather than do it on screen, I'm just going to show you one that I've already done it to. Now look at the progression here. Here's one that's been cut in two directions. I'm going to even show you another step in just a second. See if I can squeeze them all in here and we can put the cameraman to work. There, look at that crude jelly bean up there. Gets a little bit nicer looking here. It's your option if you want to stop right there and call that a good cloud. It's just fine. It looks pretty good to me. But this one, a lot of surface texture in there. I left it in there so that you could See what yours is probably going to look like. Now here comes a neat, fun part. If I can make a decent cut from this angle. So I mentioned this earlier, that caner's greatest pleasure is that first cut. Even if you like that front textured piece, you're going to have to do something with this cane. And cutting that first piece off and flopping it down. Look at that gorgeous cloud. I love that one. There's a lot of ways we can use that. I mean, I could show you canes all day long where I've tucked those into a complicated landscape. But here's a piece that I made where I didn't even go much further. This is a little bit different, but not much. I took this concept. I started out with a taller shaped, a more vertically oriented sky. I put 3 clouds in, all the steps being exactly the same. I cut a space for them, tucked the clouds in there, made the Jaggy cut, through the whole thing, all 3 clouds at once. You cut through the entire cane. It's a lot of fun, actually. Pretty simple cane. You can even see maybe a little bit of the effect of cutting on the sky right there. There's you get a jagginess in the sky, which might seem unimportant to you, but it adds a real painterly look to the whole thing. It gives a textural effect to it. Then I laid a couple of clay strips crisscrossing through the middle of the cane to give it the effect of looking through a window. I added a clay frame that I made on here, glued a pin back on it, signed my name on it because somebody asked me to, and there it is. At the beginning of today's lesson, we looked at some of my own landscapes, some of which were quite a bit more complex than what we built today. But believe it or not, you already know most of the techniques that went into making those. There were the shaded cane, there was the cutting and inserting of elements like mountains or clouds, and then my personal favorite, my little baby, the Jaggy Cut. I'm going to go through some of those pieces again, taking a look at more sophisticated pieces, and this time I hope you'll recognize a little bit more how we accomplish that, where I use those techniques. And in each piece as I go through it, as a new element appears, we'll stop and explain how I did that, how I put that piece in there. This is a good place to start, this little night scene that I did with a meteor shooting through the sky here. I look at it, take a good look at it, see if you recognize anything familiar there. We've got a shaded cane as the background. We cut and inserted some mountains into the foreground. I need to tell you that the sky is actually 2 pieces. I can show it to you, actually. There's the shaded part of it with a solid, darker part at the top here. The reason for that is because we're going to insert elements into each piece, and it's much easier to do when those are apart. Now, stars are particularly problematic because it's pretty hard to cut that shape out and insert it into the cane. I've got a trick for doing that, and let me show you how it works. In order to do it, we got to make a star first. So we start with a little white block of clay and a template that I cut out of our poster board, our cardboard. It looks like a star. Lay it on top of that block. Cut around the shape straight down. By the way, I keep this block is a short, small block because you want to keep this cut straight, and as usual, a smaller cane is easier to do than a larger one. Cut around that, cut all the outside pieces off so that you're left with the nice shape of a star right there. Now take the same cardboard piece and place it on a blue piece of clay, one that's the same color as the sky that it's going into. This is such a dark color, it barely even shows on camera. But make sure that those 2 colors are the same because that whole piece is going to eventually go into this. So once you get that piece stuck on there, cut out the shape of the star, taking the outside pieces like this and pushing them in around the star that we cut out previously. When you get that all together, it looks about like this, and then squeeze, pull, and reduce. Make the whole thing smaller. I'm pretty rough-handed with this. I don't use any special tools. I just squeeze and pull, and this is so much fun to watch this happen. As it gets smaller, with a little bit of luck, it doesn't distort it very much. It's a pretty good-looking star. Now let me show you how I made that moon. I took a little strip of sort of a pale yellow clay, wrapped it around a blue cylinder, which was the same color as the sky it's going to go into. I wrapped it in a sheet of the same color, just rolled it up using the same rolling technique we showed for making canes way back at the beginning. I cut that into a square, reduced it, and then put it into my cane. Let me show you how I did that. I took there's some subtleties here I need to show you. Here's that pale yellow piece wrapped around a cylinder. I want to start this roll on the blue side over here. That's so that when it comes around and overlaps, that it doesn't make any kind of a funny indentation into my moon. So first of all, just sort of flatten this down, taper it out a little bit, set that moon down, blue side down, right, nice, just line it right up there. I have to get this started with my knife. Yours might come off easier. Mine's getting hot. There it is. And then, come on, baby. Roll. Once you get it going, it'll go just fine. Quick and smooth. Okay. Roll it up nice and fat like that. Mine's cracking a little bit, so maybe I'm going a little bit too quick. But we go anyway. Like that. There it is. Now I wrapped enough clay around that moon so that I can cut away some and make it square. You'll see why I made it square when we go to insert it into the cane. For now, just go with me. I'm going to cut this face smooth so that it's easy to work on. There. That probably looks better anyway. Take a look at that cane. Score some lines on there. Draw a little square in there that encompasses the moon. It's big enough to enclose the moon. Don't get too close to the moon, because when you cut down through here, there's a chance that you might cut into the moon itself. So once you get that marked on there, we're going to remove the material from the outside, turning it around into a square. Sharp blades, small canes, steady hand. Two sides off. Right there. Two more to go. And it's not necessarily square, but it's squared up anyway. It's rectangular maybe, but now it's easy to work with. And now you can reduce that we're going to need to reduce it. Squeeze it down the same way we always did, and then I'll show you how we insert it into the cane. So let's talk about putting that moon into the sky. So here's our sky cane, the top portion of the sky cane, the unshaded portion. Here's that reduced moon we just made a minute ago. Lay it down about where you want in the cane, and I'm going to suggest to you that you put it about a third of the way into the sky. I mean, a third of the way from the edge. Something I wish I would have learned a long time ago. Nothing critical about that, however. Once you get it setting approximately where you want it to be, mark each edge with the edge of a blade or a needle tool, whatever. Get that thing out of the way. And now cut your cane on those lines. This is more cutting and inserting. Just a variation on the theme that we've been doing today. Cut that chunk out. You gotta be a little bit careful here, keeping everything in place. Let's set those aside like that. Great, that's the piece I cut out. The moon is gonna come in here right in the middle of that. So, put it down on that piece, like so. See that a little bit better. There we go, like that. So resting right on top of the piece it's gonna go into. Great. And then cut off the two outside pieces, which are going to be keepers. That is, we're going to put those back in there. So take those two pieces away, that one and this one. Set that aside. Get out of the way. Get some, see what we got there. It doesn't show too well here. Let's see this. There we go. Those two pieces. Now, lift the moon up and pull that piece out of there. Drop the moon down where it was. Bring the two side pieces in together like that. See what I did there? So basically, that was the piece I removed from my cane, and what I've done is spliced the moon into the middle of it. So we're ready to reassemble our cane. Squeeze this together a little bit so you got something you can work with. Back to the night cane, the sky cane. There it is. Bring this in, line it up on that edge. This is all pretty dark clay here. I'm going to put it there now, make sure you can see it. There it is. Okay, line up like that. And then that last outside piece, let me bring it in. Put that outside piece that I cut off, and I'll get my hands out of the way so it shows up better. Like that. There it is. There, I think you can see all the pieces. Kind of set in 1/3 of the, in from the edge, and it's put back together. Squeeze that up, firm it together, and the moon's in there. There's the beginning of our night sky. Now, of course, we got to deal with the stars. They go in exactly the same way. Pick the point that you want your star. Remember, the stars had the square outline on them, the same color as the sky. Pick a place you want it to go, cut into it, take a little chunk out, remove a piece the size of that cane, and drop it in place. And here's one where I've slipped the stars in. Look at that. Well, the only thing left in this cane, the only new piece in this cane, is that meteor right there. That's going to go into the shaded portion of our cane, which reminds me to tell you why we kept this sky in two pieces in the first place. So I'm going to have to cut through that cane and insert the meteor into that, and it would be, I'd have to cut through my, my stars and moon if I hadn't kept them separate. So that's the reason for that. Now let me show you how I made the meteor in the first place. I took a small shaded cane, shades from white to blue. That was my idea of a meteor. I cut a little slice from it. You see it's a little bit big there. I just cut a slice off, a fairly thin slice, but it's real important to me for this one that this be a uniform, thin, no irregularities in this cane. So I passed it through a pasta machine on a fairly thin setting because it's important that we have a straight, flat cane. My cuts, even my good cuts, aren't good enough for this. So, come back to my shaded part of the sky and decide roughly where I want that meteor to fit in there. Probably can't see that too well right there, but I'll use the back side of my blade to kind of play around, decide where I want it to go, make a mark on the cane like that. Think about that for a second. Stand that piece up on an edge, and that's where it's going to go. I kind of like the looks of that. Now the white end is the down part. That's the meteor itself, actually, so we put the white end down there. Now, another cut. Cutting this cane again. I cut my canes sometimes 100 times, maybe. This one hasn't been that many times, but it's sure got a lot of cuts in it. Anyway, look down on that cut. Shoot right down through the middle of it. Two halves. There it is, like that. Pick up that meteor strip, flap, lay it into the cane, about like that. What we got there? Ooh, we can see it already there. Take the other half, bring it back together. This is one of those cases where normally when I insert something into a cane, I'll cut the material away and remove it. This one is so skinny, I think we can get away with just pushing it together, squeezing it right around there. Now it kind of hides in the crevices there a little bit now, but that's okay. Don't forget that that thing runs all the way through, that all of our slices are going to be the same, and that this facial stuff here gets cut off. So you can do some squeezing there. Bring the rest of the sky into place. Ooh, I like the way that looks. Place the moon and the stars on top of that. And that's pretty close to done. Now, to add a little bit of drama to this whole thing, I think I would probably trace some mountains on the horizon down here and cut them out the same way we did earlier in the class today. Cut those chunks out of there and insert some mountains into the horizon. I made a little cardboard template right here for this. This is a good idea to do when before you get too crazy with your landscapes, is to try some things out. Cut out little facades here, little stencils and templates, and put them in place and see how it looks. There, you can see that just about right there. Not too bad. So that would be added in here. I'm not going to do it right now, but so squeeze this all together, and we could call it good right now. But what I really want to do is put this down here, and because I love to cut these things so much, you don't see a lot of irregularity there, but what I'm going to get rid of is some of the bumpiness and wowiness there. See that stuff? It's that old first slice thing again. Okay, right down through that thing. Oh, there it is. Just like that. Isn't that great? Let me slip those mountains back in there again. Now, of course, I'd reduce this whole thing to a reasonable size. Here's another landscape that we looked at the beginning of today's lesson. I call it Chugach Sunrise. Let's start by talking about what's the same about this cane, and then we'll talk about what's different about it, I guess. I hope you can see that I cut these mountains in here and inserted them in the same way we did it on a couple of other canes. There's a shaded sky, some Jaggy Cut clouds, and there's a border on this one, which is really a sort of small addition that I don't use very often anymore. We just wrapped that whole cane with a sheet of white and then followed up by a piece of black. I'll make sure that we cover all our bases here. Now, what's different about this one? Well, if you can see it on the screen here, the light seems to come from the center of this cane, and it radiates out from that spot, just the way a sunrise would. So let me show you how we accomplish that. I picked a color that looked kind of like a sunrise to me, and I shaped it into sort of a dome, a little half circle sort of piece like this. And I laid it on my work surface. And then I made a Skinner blend cane from that color out to something else. In this case, from this color. This is an F20 on here, and it goes out to a blue color. And every sheet that I laid on this dome, followed that contour, resulting in this arch, or this arc shape. Looks kind of like a rainbow right here. So that really, gave me a pretty good feel for a sunrise coming up behind the mountains. Then on this one, I decided next to Jaggy Cut the whole thing. The difference here is pretty subtle. This is the one that I laid up. This is the one I did the Jaggy Cut on. Now I did that so that, first of all, so I could see how it looked. It gives the whole thing kind of a more painterly look. And I wanted to see how it was going to be at that point. I might have just stopped there, actually. Then I decided to add some clouds to the scene. So I cut into the cane, put the clouds in, pretty much the same way we did before, and then did the Jaggy Cut on the whole cane, resulting in this. Now, remembering that after I put the clouds in there and did the Jaggy Cut, we joined it up with those mountains that we cut out. The inspiration for this cane came from cross-country skiing at night in Alaska. Simply some trees casting a shadow across the snow produced by the moon that's sort of implied back here. Well, let's start by seeing what we know about this, what we can figure out about this cane. Here you see the shaded cane used as a sky here. This is a pretty subtle blend. It's a medium blue down to a dark blue. Stars cut in and inserted the same way we did it before. There's actually a curve to this. I think it does show somewhere on the screen there. There's a nice curve to that sky, just like there was on the sunrise that we looked at a little while ago. The snow part of it, the snow section, which was a separate cane, you can ignore the shadows just for a second here. It has also has a curve to it. You can see that, and then I Jaggy Cut it. There's a little twinkle in here. I don't know if you can catch it or not, but I'll move it around and hopefully that'll show up. It's kind of cool. All it is glitter put on at the very, very end. So let's take a look at what's different about it. And that's those trees standing up there and the shadows that run across the snow. I think you'll be able to follow along how I built those in just a second here. Nothing very new here. Okay, here's a little mock-up I've made. I've got one already in place, so that's what we're after here, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Tree canes, pretty simple thing. It's just a shaded cane right there. It looks kind of like some of the other things we've used today. I think it was probably the shaded cane that I turned on its end like this that first inspired me to even try a landscape. Take a look at that, and geez, I saw a tree when I saw that. So nothing very complicated or new about that. I've cut a little chunk out of that right here, shrunk it down or reduced it down to a size that I want, and then next step is to put it into the background, so insert it into the cane that we've got here. I've got one tree in place. Now here is a time to pay a little bit of attention to light. This thing's going to drop into this scene just like that. The shading here indicates the direction of light. So make sure that these are consistent. That is, that you've got the light side on the same side of both trees. I'll show you what happens if you turn it around. Something is slightly confusing here. The light's coming from a funny direction. So I've done this. Try not to make the same mistake. So just think it through before you stick it in there. So what we're going to do to get the tree in is to lay it down where I want it, using the needle tool or the back of a blade or whatever's handy for you. Let's show, okay? I'm going to mark either side. Let's get a little bit better light. I'm going to mark that edge like that, either side of the, oops, I cut a little chunk of my tree off there. I don't want to do that. Well, that's really not going to bother. Come on out of there. And then mark the other side. Take the tree away. And now cut down, straight down through your cane one more time. And what I'm going to do is remove that material, but I use the sharp side. I'm going to remove the material where the tree is going to go. You might be thinking, well, gee, why don't you just make a single cut, split that open and stuff the tree in there? Well, that will work sometimes. But it's a good habit to get into, to remove the material where that thing's going to go. A couple of reasons for that. One of them is that it doesn't break up the pattern. If there happens to be one in the background, you don't disturb that. The other thing is, if you constantly just make cuts and stick trees in there, your cane is getting wider and wider as you go, and you wind up with some big unruly piece of clay at the end. So just get in the habit of removing the material that you replace with the element, in this case the tree. So there's two trees standing in a, I don't know, in a background, in a sky. Now, what about the shadows? Here's the ground, the foreground piece. It's going to look like that. You can see that one right there. Well, here's how I do that. Line them up. Look and see where the shadow is going to go. Make a little mark on this piece at the base of that tree, and then another mark right there. Take this piece away. And now I'm putting these at an angle like this because I'm, look once again here, because the light seems to be coming from this direction right over here. Let's see if I can show it. You get that? The light's coming from over here, casting a shadow at an angle like that. Since I've got the one angle already cut in there, one shadow cut at that angle, I want the other one to look pretty much like it. Oh, by the way, that shadow is going to be made out of just a contrasting piece of clay, a little bit darker than the one that I've got in here, quite a bit darker in this case, but it's just a darker shade of blue. So I've already pre-shaped and cut that pretty much the same thickness as the tree is. Getting back to work here. From those marks, cut down through, remove the material. It's even more important on this one to remove the material because your corners and angles are going to get disturbed if you don't. So cut that chunk out of there, like so. Take it apart. There it is. Pull that out of there. Slip. I've cut this at an angle so that, oops, you can't see that. Cut this at an angle so that it matches up the top and the bottom, like that. There, you can see that. Bring this back together. Hopefully it matches up pretty well. I think we're in pretty good shape here. There's those two shadows in there. Now, if we did this right, when I bring the two, ooh, that shows real well here. I got the bottom of that thing, yeah. What I do is start the back sides of the cane. Here you can see what I'm talking about. Start at the back edge of those like this. Look down in there. That's what I'm trying to show you. Look down in there. Line up the base of those trees and the shadows. See that it's fairly close. It doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close as you can get it. So nudge them around a little bit, line them up, and then look right down the length of them and bring those two halves together, and hopefully they will match when you get out to the front also. And there you go. There's our two trees, shadows across the snow. Oops, I'm getting my tilt all wrong. There we go, like that. There's a couple more subtleties in this piece right here, the one that I said I made this week, that I thought we should take a minute and talk about. There's small points, but let's talk about them anyway. For one thing, notice the mountains. These mountains have been Jaggy cut. They were Jaggy cut before I put them in the cane. I don't think we've done that yet. It's not a new technique, it's just a fine point that I want to make sure this is clear to you. I simply took a cane like this and went through it as a Jaggy cut first, and then cut the mountain shapes out and inserted it in the cane. So that's a fairly small point. The other thing is something else we haven't done. You might be a little nervous about this after you've got your mountains together with your sky. You're cutting in some foreground if that appeals to you and you feel like doing that. How do you go about that? It's not as simple or as obvious as it looks, but it's not that complicated either. It's another you know, something like we've done already. So let me use a simpler example and show you how that goes. Let's take this one. I probably wouldn't add a foreground to this one, especially not a curved foreground to such a geometric looking cane, but if I were, I'd do it like this. I would decide where I want the foreground to go. Let's say we wanted to have a hill, a green hill sloping across over here down to that point, for example. I'd trace that line there just like I did before. If it's a real irregular line, use your curved blade and cut that out. This one's straight enough, I think I can make it with a simple straight tissue blade. In fact, sometimes I want to make a subtle curve. I'll take my blade and just bend it in my hands like that and make the cut that way. Hold it like that. So, get the sharp side down, Mike, and cut about where we want it to go. Right down and through. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're taking a gouge where, there we go. Taking a big old whack out of that cane. Make a little cane of the color you want to go in there. Could have made this one a little bit thicker, but this will work. Hold your cane up to, I have to turn it to myself so I can do the action that I'm going to describe here, but hold it up to that piece of clay right there. Take your needle tool and trace out what you want out of that thing, like that. So it might be a little bit of a devil of a cut. And do the same thing, remove the material that's in that cane, that is, cut out the hills that we're going to want to use here. I'm going to make this in a series of cuts, just so you think this isn't all a one-cut show here. I think that's going to be close enough right there. Excellent, works just fine. Then you bring that up into its position, make it fit. Squeeze it on in there, like that. There's the first hill. Now if I wanted to add a second or a third, here's how I'd do the next one. I would, you know, decide where I want the hill to go, trace a line there, I'll make it dark enough so it shows. This front face gets cut off anyway, so these lines aren't a problem. I'm going to put one way up there like that, really go crazy here. Oh, I better not do that, come to think of it. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, I drew a line in there. Now I'm going to cut that piece out just like we did before. Now I'm cutting through, you know, everything here. Keep that in mind. We just put this whole piece in here. I'm going to cut most of it away. Well, that's the way it goes. It's not waste clay. It's something you can use for some other project. So I make a cut like that, up into there. Take it back to the piece that we're going to insert in there. I'm a little nervous about this one working, but let's see what happens. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Cut the piece out. Am I hiding anything there? I think you get the idea. Cut that out and maybe round it off a little bit like that and stick it in right there. Yeah, there it is. Not too bad. I do love that moment right there. Look at that. Oh, everything's just so sharp and clean. Actually, there's a few, there we go. A few air holes. There it is. And there's our slice, which put on there, we have a reflection in a lake. A magic moment here. Somebody showed me this little trick a couple of days ago, and I thought we'd include it in today's lesson. You remember at the beginning of our time together, we showed you these two plexiglass plates here. Well, here's how I figured out how to use these things. They're an aid in reducing the cane. I've only done this once, so I'm just going to show you what I've learned so far, and maybe it'll be helpful to you too. So I just stuck my cane. This is that last one we made, the night sky cane with the Meteor in it. I put it on one piece of plexiglass, and then, because it matters what side. You could use glass for this, by the way, or probably a nice shiny piece of metal. Squeeze your cane in there. Try to get this to adhere as well as you can. My impression is that after a little while, once it's sat there, that it seems to stick pretty well on its own, but right at first it's not going to want to stay too well. So it could be that if you let it set for a little while, it takes care of itself. At any rate, then we're going to reduce from there. Now this gives you a couple of advantages. Eventually, when the suction, the adhesion takes place, you can do a little bit of pulling on these two pieces here. It sort of gives you a handle on your cane. I thought that was kind of neat. And it also gives you a reference point you can look at. As long as these two plates are parallel, the cane's reducing at a nice linear sort of rate. We're not getting too much distortion in there. What I did was just start to squeeze in from the outside like this at first. Like that, squeezing all the way around it. And like I say, I'm not real experienced at this, but I like the results, which I'll just show you in a second. I'll take this a little way so you get the rough idea. And then later on, when it gets a little bit smaller than that, once it's been reduced a little ways, and hopefully the plexiglass is sticking pretty well, you can begin to pull on it a little bit. Now, you can't just take it and pull it apart. That's not going to work. But you can squeeze and pull at the same time. I found a position, something like this, to work pretty well, where I'm kind of pushing with my fingers this way and squeezing at the same time. You're kind of on your own with this one, but I thought it was such a neat idea. It worked out so well the first time for me that I wanted to at least show that to you. Now here's a cane, one that we've looked at before. I hope you recognize it. The one that I said we built this week, and I reduced it that way right there. So it comes out looking like this strange critter right here with these kind of flared ends like that. This is obviously waste, or at least it's not reduced, but I've reduced a lot of canes where the edges and outside tend to curl over and it becomes waste anyway. So my feelings are that this was a better way to go. I could always see my cane through the plexiglass. I had those parallel pieces to use, and all in all, it was just kind of an interesting, fun experiment. So give it a try, see how it works out. Reduction is it gives a lot of people some trouble, so this might help you out, save you some headaches. I thought we could spend the last few minutes here looking at some of my landscapes that we haven't seen yet today. Hopefully they'll inspire you, like they inspired me, actually. Here's the first one. This was that's Sleeping Lady, they call it, kind of a landmark in Anchorage. There's another moon shadow sort of pin. The Gordon family favorite. Ski tracks in the snow. And I was just experimenting with different directions of lighting. See that sunlight coming from the side over there. There's some spruces in the snow, or the fog. Ice fog, I think I called that. There's the scene off the back porch of my sister's cabin. That's a volcano over there. And there's my first attempt at birch trees. Pretty close to it anyway. A lot of birch trees in Alaska. There's a winter scene out the back window of my house. Close to it anyway. And then back to the beginning. And here's a few more of them. There's a landscape that I think I stole out from a quilting book someplace. This one I call Meteor 2. Those were spruces in the fog with a full moon. There's an early cane I did. Just practicing with the Jaggy Cut and cutting in the mountains. That one I think I called Lonesome Sky. My son wants to call it Lonesome Telephone Pole. I think I want to call him something else. Oh, here comes the Aurora Borealis. Look at that. One of my favorites for sure. At least one of my, some of the people in Alaska's favorite. The Northern Lights. There's the moonrise over the Chugach Mountains. There was a pink band through the sky like that. I have no idea where that came from, but it got in my pin. And back to the beginning. Well, there's a few of them anyway. I hope they inspired you a little bit. They've given me enormous pleasure, brought me into contact with all kinds of cool people, and I've had just a ton of fun with it. So hope this has been a lot of fun for you. Good luck and go crazy with this stuff.